Thanks, Darcy, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today, where we are presenting some very exciting clinical data for our phase 1/2 clinical trial of NTI-164, our proprietary broad-spectrum cannabinoid formulation in pediatric autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. This was the first study of its kind in autism, which originally began as a 28-day proof-of-concept safety trial back in 2021. Although we were interested in some initial signs of efficacy, the trial was not statistically powered to see a difference in the range of gold standard clinician, patient, and caregiver tools, which are used to monitor and report on autism symptoms and integration of patients into society. The focus initially was on defining the maximum tolerated dose of NTI-164 and monitoring for any adverse events, i.e. safety. However, as some will recall, this 28-day trial was extended to 54 weeks due to clinician and patient demand to stay on treatment. More recently, as our patients crossed 54 weeks of treatment, again, due to clinician and patient demand, we filed for and received Human Research Ethics Committee, or HREC approval, to continue for an additional 6 months over the 54-week treatment period. This represents a total of 80 weeks or 1.5 years of daily NTI-164 treatment. We will no longer report on any further efficacy measures from this study, but we will continue to collect safety data on these children, which will help inform further regulatory discussions with the US Food and Drug Administration. Advantageously for Neurotech and our shareholders, this has afforded us the opportunity to collect a significant amount of data on these patients, which we progressively reported at 20 weeks on the 26th of October 2022. We now have provided the analysis undertaken at 52 weeks of continued oral daily treatment of NTI-164 in 11 autistic patients. For the company today represents the culmination of a significant amount of effort and diligence from our team, our consultants, our clinicians led by Professor Michael Fay at Monash Medical Center, and last but not least, our patients and their families who have experienced significant improvements in their quality of life over the trial period. I trust all of you on today's call have had a chance to read the announcement as lodged with ASX this morning and perhaps taken the time to familiarise yourselves with our presentation. Slide 2 shows our important disclaimer for today's presentation. Slide 3 highlights the structure of today's call. I will walk you through the 52-week data, our strategies, our clinical focus, pipeline and milestones, and I will then follow with a summary and outlook. Turning to slide 4, before I commence the reporting of the data, I wanted to remind all of you what we're seeking to achieve with this very pertinent quote. The goals of treatment for ASD are to improve core deficits in social communication, social interactions, and minimize the impact of restrictive behaviors, with an overarching goal to help children develop greater functional skills and independence. I can't help but feel today the data we highlight as we have made significant progression in achieving these goals for children on our trial. Just recapping the opportunity in autism in slide 5. ASD is a serious neuroinflammatory developmental disorder that impairs the ability to communicate and interact. Common symptoms include behavioural issues, agitation, repetitive movements, inability to focus, and compulsive neurological patterns. The prevalence is high at 1 in 44 children in the US, and the current treatment market is worth close to $2 billion. We continue to believe there is a huge unmet medical need. Patients need better treatment. Current drugs have numerous side effects, including weight gain, breast tissue development, nausea, dry mouth, anxiety, irritability, insomnia, stomach pain, and movement disorders. I will now turn to slide 6, which addresses the NDIS and autism. Within the Australian context, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS, which provides assistance to people with a disability as well as their families and carers. The cost of the NDIS is $35 billion in 2022 and expected to grow to $100 billion by 2033. Interestingly, 34% of the 550,000 NDIS patients have ASD, and 40% of those are less than 14 years of age, which is expected to grow to 860,000 by 2030. A back-of-the-envelope calculation highlights the actual cost of autism patient care in that number. It's $6.1 million and growing. This is based on the average ASD funding of $32,800 per annum, relating to physio, psychology, speech therapy, and support workers. Hence, There is a strong market need for an effective therapeutic intervention such as NTI-164 to improve ASD symptoms and reduce healthcare costs, given the prevalence of ASD in Australia is estimated at 1 in 50 and represents a 40-fold increase in the last 20 years. This rate of expenditure is clearly not sustainable. As a basic example, and if an intervention like NTI-164 was able to halve the associated costs under the NDIS by managing an ASD child effectively, it would today save $3 billion and by 2033, $8.5 billion in direct costs. In addition, there is a huge societal benefit, which is not modelled here, that could equate to many millions of dollars more in economic activity, with autistic children being able to attend school, able to integrate into society more effectively, and their caregivers able to work or participate more fully into activities of daily living. Turning now to slide 7, the summary of the trial. I've covered most of this in the introduction, but wanted to remind investors of the significance of the data set. We now have approximately 7,000 assessment points over 52 weeks of daily oral treatment with NTI-164. This is incredibly meaningful for future data submissions and monitoring. Turning now to slide 8, the safety effect was maintained nicely over 52 weeks from the initial 28 days and 20-week data presented previously. No serious adverse events were recorded across all doses. The few adverse events included mild nausea and abdominal pain, which were tolerated and manageable. As there was no placebo arm, this may well be the oil formulation, not the active constituents, but our current double-blind randomized controlled phase 2/3 trial will potentially provide an answer for that. Our children continue to show normal blood chemistry, kidney and liver function, plus normal vital signs. One patient required an operation that resulted in them being unable to continue treatment beyond 20 weeks. So at 52 weeks, our sample size was 11. Turning to slide 9, this shows the summary p-values of the efficacy measures, with a p-value less than 0.05 considered statistically significant. It is important to remember the study was never statistically powered for any efficacy measures. Safety was the primary endpoint. We achieved highly significant results for the most clinically important measures of severity of illness, adaptive behaviour, and social responsiveness. A number of analyses relating to anxiety were not collected at 52 weeks. These consistent improvements across multiple standard clinical measures at 52 weeks versus baseline and relative to what we showed in our previous 20-week data simply do not support a placebo effect in these patients. We're very pleased with this data set. Slide 10 shows the change in the severity of illness scale, with 1 being normal and 7 being extremely ill. As a reminder, Clinical Global Impression, CGI, is a physician observer rated scale synthesizing the clinician's impression of the global state of an individual and is frequently employed in clinical trials for neuropsychiatric disorders. The CGI is a 3-item observer rated scale that measures illness severity, this slide, global improvement and therapeutic effect. NTI-164 treatment is associated with a significant reduction in disease severity with a 1.3 scale change or 30% improvement. Approximately 40% of subjects were markedly or severely ill at baseline, 0% from 4 weeks on. You can see these children's condition at the median has now stabilised at 1 year of treatment. It's unlikely, but not impossible, that further improvements could be seen. However, these children now sit at the junction of borderline ill to mildly ill, which is an impressive outcome in these children when coupled with their adaptive behaviours, which I will describe shortly. Slide 11. Turning to CGI global improvement. The CGI-I score measures the clinician's overall assessment of the patient's improvement or worsening of symptoms compared to baseline on a 7-point scale. 100% of active patients showed improvement after 20 weeks of daily treatment. After 52 weeks of daily treatment with NTI-164, 90% of active patients had a global improvement of much improved, and 1 patient had a score of very much improved. Turning to slide 12. CGI therapeutic effect is a clinician scale measuring the clinician's assessment of the therapeutic effect of a treatment on the patient's clinical status compared to the patient's condition at baseline. After 52 weeks of daily NTI treatment, 10% of active patients demonstrated the highest possible efficacy index of 1 to 2, marked a therapeutic effect, vast improvement. which means complete or near complete remission of all symptoms, and 90% had an efficacy index of 5 or 6, moderate therapeutic effect to decided improvement, i.e. partial remission. Turning now to slide 13, the Vineland measure. To remind investors, Vineland-3 is internationally recognized as a leading instrument for supporting the diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disabilities in ASD, specifically adaptive behavior. It measures an individual's ability to function independently in their everyday life and is informative in predicting long-term outcomes for people with ASD. Improving adaptive abilities in patients is therefore a desirable treatment goal. The adaptive behavior composite consists of communication, daily living skills, and socialization. Vineland-3 has excellent test, retest reliability and between rater, i.e. clinician and or parent. The test is normative based, so it compares norm-based adaptive functioning compared to others of the same age. Therefore, a standard score of 100 is the mean with a standard deviation of 15 points. This means a beneficiary or patient with a T-score of 100 should be understood as being similar to the typical population of the same age in those areas with that score. At baseline, the composite mean score in the children we trialed was approximately 67, and that improved to 73 at 52 weeks. As I mentioned in the ASX release, we saw an improvement in score of exactly 6.4 in their overall adaptive behaviour, which was significant and is clinically meaningful. We've not provided all the individual clinical data, as you can appreciate. However, I'm pleased to let you know that one child did achieve scores within the normative mean range for all measures, with scores of close to or over 100 for all measures when they started at an average of 84 across these 4 Vineland measures. Turning to slide 4, social responsiveness scores, or SRS. As a reminder, children with autism spectrum disorder have difficulty with social interaction behaviours, including establishing and maintaining relationships, reciprocating social interactions, and communication. SRS2 is again a validated measurement tool of assessing these factors. At 20 weeks of daily treatment with NTI-164, the study achieved a strong overall significance for social responsiveness with a p-value equal to 0.012. This positive change remains statistically significant at 52 weeks with a p-value of 0.049. Some subdomain measures improved statistically, while others did not reach significance at 52 weeks. Naturally, small numbers of patients can impact this data set. NTI-164 does improve social skills, which we believe is beneficial for social functioning and social anxiety. Turning now to our conclusions on the trial on slide 15. We continue to show excellent durability of results at 52 weeks, with clinical benefits showing a significant improvement across a large number of clinically validated assessments versus baseline, day 0. Any significant change over time for measures such as CGIS, Vineland, and SRS are considered clinically meaningful, and NTI-164 showed improvement for all measures at 52 weeks versus baseline. We continue to reinforce our statement made at our 20-week data release last year that NTI-164 is a patient-enabling drug with non-drug behavioural therapies, when combined with non-drug behavioural therapies, by improving daily living and allowing children to integrate into society via improvements in socialisation and anxiety. This is in stark contrast to some of the restrictive behaviours and prescription effects of risperidone, which is prescribed to prevent aggression and irritability. However, as I mentioned earlier, can incite a host of debilitating side effects. Our lead investigator, Professor Michael Fay, has provided his synopsis of the 52-week data, which again is very supportive of the data he has seen to date. That does conclude our data release. I'd like to turn now to slide 16, which focuses on our strategies, pipeline milestones, and outlook. Turning to slide 17, our 4 core strategies are highlighted here. We're focused on pediatric patients. We focus on rare neurological disorders where there is persistent evidence of neuroinflammation. We focus on partnering with key opinion leaders and clinicians, which helps drive our clinical programs, and we focus on drug product development. We actively encourage regulatory oversight for NTI-164, because our aim is to seek regulatory approvals in all major markets, allowing us to make a therapeutic claim. This brings significant pricing benefits and reimbursement, and when coupled with our patents and future regulatory levers like orphan designations, it is truly a strong position to be in. Slide 18 provides more details around our strategies. I won't go into these in more detail here, but suffice to say there has been considerable effort in developing these strategies, and we are commencing the execution of our plan in earnest in 2023. Slide 19. Our focus on ASD, PANDAS, PANS, and cerebral palsy underscores the strategy. They are neurological disorders with neuroinflammatory drivers. There is a lack of effective treatment or no treatments at all. They manifest in childhood, and for PANDAS is also considered a rare or orphan disorder. We continue to believe there is strong scientific rationale for NTI-164 in these indications with our anti-inflammatory effects and strong safety profile. And we've established clinician support and high patient and caregiver interest in our programs. Turning now to slide 20. Pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections, or PANDAS, and pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome, PANS, is a clinical diagnosis given to children who have a dramatic, often one-day onset of neuropsychiatric symptoms, including obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and or restrictive eating. Children may exhibit tic movements, become moody, irritable and aggressive, and anxious, and have difficulty with schoolwork. Although the cause of PANS is unknown in the majority of cases, the disorder is hypothesized to be triggered by infections, metabolic disturbances, and other inflammatory reactions. PANDAS is considered a subset of PANS. There are no FDA or EMA approved treatments. Intravenous immunoglobulin, IVIG, is used off-label. However, it's not proven, and it comes at a very high cost, up to $30,000 per month in the US, for example. And there's next to no reimbursement in the US for IVIG in PANDAS PANS. As I mentioned, PANDAS PANS is considered a rare pediatric orphan disorder with strong neuroinflammatory effects, which is ideally suited for our NTI-164 clinical trial. We also think it's great there's now PANDAS PANS diagnostic criteria, treatment guidelines, and the World Health Organization recognition within the ICD-11 class of diseases, and that happened for the first time in 2020. In our view, this highlights the urgent need. As many of you know, we recruited our first patient a few weeks ago, and the interest and recruitment remains strong. We look forward to updating you on completion of recruitment. Turning now to slide 21, I just wanted to introduce our cerebral palsy program to you as well today in more detail. Cerebral palsy, or CP, is the most common motor disability in childhood with abnormal brain development or damage to the developing brain. CP is stratified by spastic CP, which is 80% of cases, dyskinetic CP, 6%, ataxic CP, 6%, and mixed CP, which is the balance of cases. We're focusing NTI-164 on spastic CP, where neuroinflammation evidence is strongest. Interventions in CP ideally seek to improve gross motor function, increase participation at the social role level, and to improve comfort and ease of care, and improve comfort for the patient, and to improve ease of care by others, or to improve the overall quality of life of the individual. Primary treatment options for CP are medication, therapy, and surgery. The goal of CP treatment is to manage the symptoms, specifically spasticity and or dystonia. Several therapies like botulinum A shows no improvement in motor functions, and baclofen has unwarranted side effects. And might I add, weak evidence for quality of life benefits in these patients. So again, we see an opportunity here for NTI-164. Available evidence also supports the pathogenic role of inflammation in CP and its ongoing role as a comorbidity of CP. Hence, there are advantages for NTI-164. Indeed, Professor Michael Fay, who is our PI on the Autism study, has recently published a review of evidence on exactly this topic. So if we look at the market opportunity, there's 500,000 children under the age of 18 who have cerebral palsy in the United States. And each year there's 8,000 to 10,000 babies born with CP. And the opportunity is around $4.3 billion US for the treatment market, which is dominated mostly by spastic CP by 2030. Turning to slide 22, our clinical pipeline. Looking at our pipeline, I'm particularly proud of the development we've made in adding depth and breadth to our pipeline. In 2020 to early 2021, we were basically a preclinical company with an interesting asset, NTI-164. Today, we have 3 neurological disorders in phase 1/2 clinical development, 2 of which being ASD have already completed and a further and reported with a further 6 months extension as noted. And for pandas, we've also commenced recruitment. In addition, we expect to file for approval to start a phase 1/2 trial in CP. And finally, we've done a lot of work on a new indication in a rare neurological, which is in the rare neurological space, which we expect to announce very shortly. This too will be a phase 1/2 clinical trial design. Our core ASD program, as many of you know, has now commenced recruitment in the new phase 2/3 trial in Australia in 54 children. This trial is double-blind, placebo-controlled, which we hope will confirm our findings today and previously from our phase 1/2 trial. Turning to slide 23, a summary. This provides some relevant and recent updates from our commercial examples. So let's unpack this a little more. By implementing our 4 core strategies, we now have got multiple shots on goal in 3 pediatric neurological disorders. I mentioned we are well advanced with a 4th disorder, and I've provided some further relevant examples of rare disorders where there is evidence of sustained neuroinflammation. These are right within our wheelhouse potentially. By resolutely focusing on this space, we have access to a number of regulatory levers from the US Food and Drug Administration and the European Medicines Agency. These include pre-IND feedback, orphan drug designation, priority reviews, breakthrough therapy designation, fast track designation, and rare pediatric priority vouchers. As many of you may know, recently Neuron Pharmaceuticals, a company I've followed and admired for many years, announced their partner Arcadia Pharmaceuticals had received FDA approval for the drug trofinetide, now branded as Daybue, in Rett syndrome. This is significant to the extent that now both Jazz and GW and Neuron Arcadia have developed drugs specifically for rare pediatric neurological disorders. And in GW Jazz's case, this is a cannabis-derived CBD product that generated $736 million in revenues in 2022 for 2 rare epileptic disorders, as noted. Although Neuron is just commencing its journey, analysts expect $500 million in peak US sales in Rett syndrome, and the cost of the intervention has been estimated by analysts at $450,000 per annum. Neuron recently commented in the US there are just 5,000 Rett patients registered and identifiable. This company, Neuron, is now at least a $1.5 billion company and growing. Hence, we are very excited to see these kinds of success stories with a very similar strategy to our own. Turning now to slide 24, our milestones are numerous and significant for 2023. In the first half, we have delivered an extension to our trial by 6 months. Today, the final results of our trial, we've commenced recruitment for PANDAS-PANS. We held the pre-IND meeting with the FDA on the 15th of March US time. We expect, just so there's the successes, what we expect to happen to 30 June is HREC TGA approval for CP, phase 1/2, completion of patient recruitment for our PANDAS study, and we do expect to launch a new pediatric neurological disorder clinical trial as well. In the second half, we have more news relating to the results of our PANDAS study, the commencement of patient recruitment for CP, completion of recruitment in ASD phase 2/3. We hope to submit a US IND submission with the FDA, and we expect to complete recruitment of the undisclosed new neurological disorder, which I've mentioned. Turning now to our outlook, we are focused on rare pediatric neurological disorders. Long-term safety and efficacy of NTI-164 is now established in a predominantly pediatric neurological disorder with strong neuroinflammatory effects in ASD. We have accelerated clinical development via rapid and cost-effective proof of concept phase 1/2 trials in Australia for new pediatric neurological disorders. And we also have strong clinician engagement as evidenced by our recruitment profile and trial initiation. And we have potential access to numerous regulatory levers from the US FDA and EMA. Our funding back in Q4 of last year provides sufficient runway to complete these clinical trials and develop a pathway with the US Food and Drug Administration. We had $8 million in cash as at 31 December. I'd now like to turn the call back to Darcy for Q&A. Please go ahead, Darcy.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press star 2. If you're on a speakerphone, please pick up the handset to ask your question. We'll now pause a moment to allow for any questions to register. Thank you. There are no questions at this time. I'll now hand back to Dr. Duthie for closing remarks.
Thanks, Darcy, and thanks everyone for listening today. We certainly look forward to our next update on our trial progressions and regulatory milestones. Thank you and have a good morning.